AI developers are very aware of all the risks that we talk about in this article, and they do not want to deploy AIs that are going to disempower humans. The question is, why do I think they might fail? The trouble is that AIs could pretend to be aligned with our goals in those environments when they actually aren't. If they do have some kind of misalignment, they have incentives to hide it. Just because it knows what humans value doesn't mean that it's going to value the things that humans value.
Every step seems pretty reasonable, but then you get to the end and it's like, oh, okay, so AI robot takeover in 20 years? Like, at that point, my skepticism kicks back in, and it's like, I must have gone wrong somewhere because this is now a science fiction story. This is not reality anymore. Today, I'm scrutinizing the AI X-risk arguments with Zershaaneh Qureshi, a researcher at 80,000 Hours. We're going to be discussing the article Risks from Power-Seeking AI Systems, which Zershaaneh wrote for the 80,000 Hours website. This is one of the best intros to AI risk I've ever read, because it addresses all the obvious questions, such as why couldn't we just switch off a misbehaving AI? Would we really be so stupid to deploy dangerous AI systems? And is there any real evidence for these risks? Welcome, Zershaaneh.
Thank you so much for having me, Ruben, and I'm glad you liked the article. One thing to point out is that although I wrote this article for 80,000 Hours, my views that I'm expressing don't always represent what everyone at 80,000 Hours believes. It's very much like the conclusions that myself, my co-author, and our editor came to, rather than like literally reflective of like the 80k opinion on this.
We'll bear that in mind. In a previous career, you spent 3 years working as a consultant for the global water industry. So you understand more than most AI's impact on water usage. So why focus on this future speculative risk rather than the pressing current risk or harm of AI water usage?
Yeah, so before I get into like direct comparison here, I do want to say that the world is facing some really serious environmental issues, including water scarcity. I think those things are a really big deal, and I agree that the AI industry is exacerbating some of them. But yeah, before I say more about my own reasoning, on the water side, I wanted to acknowledge that there are some recent estimates that suggest that the AI industry doesn't actually use that much water, at least not in comparison to other things. So I haven't investigated this really at all. It's been a while since I was in the water industry. But there is a guy called Andy Masley who's written a few things about this. And yeah, can't totally vouch for his analysis, haven't looked at it closely. But one figure that really stuck out for me was, I think it was something like the AI industry in the US uses 3% of the water that the golf industry in the US uses, which is kind of small. It's sort of, it makes you wonder why there's so much discourse about water usage in the AI industry, if that's true. But I don't want to downplay this, because we'll be the kind of stuff we'll be talking about today, right? We're going to be talking about scaling things up, using a lot more infrastructure, way bigger AI systems, robots. We're going to be talking about all of this stuff. These issues can get worse. So even if right now, it's maybe not that big a deal on the water side, that could totally increase. And I think if you zoom out just from water, you think about the environmental impact more broadly, the energy usage and climate and all of these kinds of things, totally agree there are real problems here. So yeah, why am I not focusing on these problems associated with AI? It's a great question. Honestly, I think it really comes down to the fact that I have a lot of faith in the environmental sector, and the water industry to solve these problems without me. Yeah, I mean,
and this is what you saw from your career.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in the water industry, I met so many people doing really groundbreaking stuff to make processes more efficient, drive down water and energy use, improving planning, which is a big part of it, using cleaner energy. There's so much cool stuff going on, so many people doing it. I wish I could say the same for the risks of AI that we're going to talk about today. In comparison, I think the environmental risks of AI are just not that neglected. I think in the UK alone, there's hundreds of thousands of people in quote unquote green jobs. And I guess only some selection of those are really tackling the hardest environmental issues. But there are maybe a couple of thousand people in the whole world like who are thinking about the risks from power seeking AI systems like full time. And
Hmm.
like that's a huge difference. I'm like way less sure that people are going to solve these risks without me, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a super important problem and might get more important in the future, but that doesn't mean that every person thinking about AI should only be thinking about water usage and electricity usage, etc. We
Yeah,
should have a
yeah.
portfolio approach.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like you can care about multiple things. There are like limited resources, so I want to like encourage more to be allocated in this direction. But I like totally endorse people worrying about the environmental side too.
Yeah, yeah. And the same, you're not saying that those people should stop worrying about that and start worrying about AI risk. It's like we need but people worrying about both.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do. I think I do like endorse some people like changing their jobs. I mean, 80,000 hours is very keen to get people like changing their jobs to work directly on AI risk. And I think we would
Hmm.
endorse like some people who are working in the environmental industry to like change their careers, probably for similar reasons to me, and that it's like these problems are more neglected and could use more people. But we definitely don't think that everyone in the world, you know, like every person listening to this should definitely be working on AI. We just think that like definitely way more people should be moving in this direction than like currently is happening.
Sure, sure. So we're going to talk about how AI smarter than humans could be an existential risk. Because if you build something smarter than yourself, then the natural question to ask is, well, how are you going to control that? But isn't this just hype from Silicon Valley tech bros trying to sell their AI slop? I mean, have we really seen any evidence that we're getting anywhere close to superhuman level intelligence? Shouldn't we think about this later?
Yeah, okay. So I do have a couple of things to say about this. One thing to say is that, like, I don't think that we necessarily need, like, superhuman level intelligence, or, like, at least not what people often mean by that, for the risks that we're going to talk about today to play out. And the other thing is, I do think that we are closer to getting, like, extremely advanced AI systems than some people might believe. And I, like, do definitely want to, like, acknowledge the point about hype. Within that. But yeah, then maybe I'll start on the like, you don't necessarily need like superhuman intelligence. Basically, I do think that for AIs to like pose a meaningful risk of taking over, of disempowering humans, which is the kind of threat model that we're talking about today, they are going to need to be really capable in some ways. In our article, we like highlighted things like being very good at planning and strategizing. But I think the point that I want to make right now is that I don't think that they need to be way better than humans, like across the board at like all like types of task, basically. I think if you had AIs that were like, I don't know, roughly human level at a lot of things, maybe even less than human level at many things, but like we're particularly good at like scientific research, technology development, those kinds of things. We'd have some incentives to like deploy these AIs in the economy to like automate some of this like scientific research and development, etc. And we'd probably have incentives to like deploy many of them. I mean, some estimates like imagine that we deploy like hundreds of millions of them. Like that's an extreme example. Maybe it's more like thousands or just a million or
Right.
something like that. Even if they're like not that great at like various things that humans value, you've got to remember that each of them is like working way faster than we can. Like they absorb just like tons of information so quickly, like an entire book, like I don't know, in like minutes or an hour or something like that. They're like running
Hmm.
24 hours a day. They don't need to take breaks or anything like that. And if you just think about it in terms of that, so in terms of their sheer numbers and just like how much more brain power they have to be working on the like the few narrow things that they're good at, like that group could still have really serious advantages over humans. And I think that if that group decided that they wanted to launch a takeover, I basically just don't like our chances of winning.
So even if each individual AI was not as smart as a human across the board, it could be the case that thousands or tens of thousands working together could still pose a takeover risk.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I don't want to kind of downplay that. They do need to be like very capable, very smart in some ways. They need to be like good enough at like certain tasks that are economically valuable to be deployed in those kinds of numbers in the first place. There have got to be incentives for us to deploy these systems. And they've got to like for sure, and we'll talk about this, but like be good at like planning and have a kind of like strategic understanding of what they should be doing, and like be good at doing things like, I don't know, building weapons or like designing technologies that they can use against us or something like that. They need to have like really serious skills. So it is important for us to have more AI progress for these like risks to actually play out. But I don't think we need to imagine something like when people talk about a super intelligence, like an AI that's just like vastly superior to humans on like every possible cognitive domain. It doesn't have to be like that.
What might it not have to do?
Yeah, let's think. So there are certain types of reasoning that don't seem like they're necessarily that like relevant to it getting deployed in the world. And that's things like it doesn't need to be great at like solving riddles or like, I don't know, doing this kind of reasoning of like, if I have this chair and I like shift it in this direction, it's going to look like this.
Like mental rotation puzzles.
Yeah, it probably doesn't need to be able to do that. It doesn't need to be like particularly gifted at like poetry or like arts and stuff, even though, you know, AI systems are getting particularly good at those things. It doesn't need to like be great at that kind of thing. Artsy or cultural or like social type things that like humans value a lot, none of those things seem on the surface to be like obviously necessary for takeover. I think it is really like strategy relevant things, being good enough at like whatever tasks they are automating to be actually deployed in the first place to do those things. And depending on like what your understanding of like how they're going to take over is, like maybe you're imagining that they're going to like hack into critical infrastructure, well then they've got to be really good at like hacking. Or if you imagine that they're going to like design a bioweapon, then they've got to be really good at like bio research stuff. So they probably need like relatively narrow capabilities in that sense.
Okay. I mean, when you talk about hacking, or well, maybe that has happened already a little bit with the news from Claude, depending on your view on that. But when you talk about automating science or developing bioweapons, we're clearly not talking about ChatGPT here. We're clearly talking about something with a much higher level of intelligence. I think the question remains, right? You could still say this is just hype. We're not near that kind of intelligence level, and this is just a distraction from real world harms.
Yeah, you are right to kind of push on that, because it is true that like current AI systems are like not the ones that I'm worried about doing this kind of thing. On the hype point, there is a lot of hype, and that's true. I think the hype can actually feed capabilities progress, though. Like, you know, when people are like very invested in what's going on here and people are really buying into it, that means you're getting like, more investment, which means like faster scaling up of these systems and better capabilities. So it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We've definitely had a period of very fast progress. Like the AIs that we have today are just like so much better than they were like 5 years ago or something like that. And if you look at trend lines on key benchmarks, like, I don't know, like there are benchmarks measuring how good they are at maths and stuff like that. They're just like making just super, super rapid progress on all of these things. That's really sustained by the hype, I think. If the hype continues, people can keep investing, keep trying to build better and better systems. And I can really see us getting to superhuman, really capable AI systems like fairly quickly.
What do you mean by fairly quickly?
Man, like, this is a big question. I think like people often talk about artificial general intelligence, which is something like kind of being competitive with humans across like either all cognitive tasks, or I would say like a range of economically valuable tasks, kind of like ruling out the things that seem a bit less relevant. I think like, something like in the next 10 years for that seems very reasonable and realistic to me. The best skeptical arguments that I've read, they're not like it's going to be hundreds of years. They're like it's going to be 30 years. So that makes me kind of feel like, okay, if I'm wrong and it's not 10 years or something, or it's not 5 years like some people think, nonetheless, like probably the most credible Yeah, the most like well worked out, credible like analysis about why it might take longer than that is still like it's a few decades away. It's still in our lifetimes, and that still seems like something worth worrying about to me.
Yeah, even the skeptics think it's within our lifetime, or at least people
Yeah,
of roughly our age.
yeah. At least like that's not true of every skeptic. There are some people out there who think it's like either never going to happen or it is just like 100 years away or something like that. But in terms of like well worked out like projections and explanations, like the people who I've actually seen put together. So the example that's in my mind is Ege Erdal, who was previously at Epoch, who wrote this thing called like the case for 30-year timelines or something like that.
And this guy has just founded a company that's trying to automate all labor, as far as or like all remote work labor.
Yes, he has done that, which I find interesting. Yeah.
So he very much depends on being able to tell investors that this is coming soon-ish, and even he's saying a few decades. So I think that's a fairly good signal that he really believes that. Otherwise, he would say something much shorter.
Yeah, and like he's looked at the data. He's got very convincing arguments. I put some weight on him being right, and like the people who think it's like 5 years away being wrong. But still, if you're thinking about like somewhere between the next 5 years and 30 years, that's pretty near term, I think.
Yeah. I mean, are we still thinking about LLMs here?
So like I think probably it's really hard to say. There's this whole thing that's been going on where like you have some skeptics, I think Francois Chollet springs to mind, who have been like, LLMs are never going to be able to do like XYZ things. Like they're never going to have these capabilities. And then like those claims seem to keep getting falsified. And then you have people like Francois Chollet kind of seeming to somewhat backtrack and be like, but the system that achieved that's not actually an LLM. It's like a sort of hybrid-y LLM with some other stuff going on. And I think maybe that is a reasonable thing to say, maybe it's not a reasonable thing to say. Like people are kind of innovating on like the traditional LLMs that we used to have a few years ago. The question is like, does that still count as the same thing or not? Like at what point do we say there's a paradigm shift? But I think like machine learning, deep learning, so far we've been getting a lot of good results and like a lot of fast progress in these areas. And I like definitely wouldn't be surprised if we were achieving the kinds of AI systems that we're particularly worried about with those methods.
Yeah, like there is hype, there's no doubt about that, but that doesn't mean there's not also tremendous progress being made at the labs. It might not just be LLMs, they're always searching for both how to improve these and make the next generation of AI. I mean, Jan LeCun, who worked at Meta, was kind of dismissive of LLMs and was pushing his new framework of JEPA, I think it's called, but his new architecture that he thinks could really do long-term planning when he thinks LLMs can't. So, like, whatever your views about LLMs, that's not what AI means. AI is much more than that, and AI is continuing to progress.
Yeah, I think that's true.
So even if AI does become as smart or smarter than humans in various ways that permit it to pursue a strategy of AI takeover, can we still argue that AI is still just a tool? It still does what we want it to do? So if I go to ChatGPT and ask it to do something, it's very happy to do what I want to do. And it doesn't just of its own accord start doing its own thing. So won't AI always just be a tool that humans use rather than an agent acting of its own accord in the real world?
Yeah, I think I want to distinguish two things here. So one thing is the idea that like AIs do what we want them to do, and one idea is that like the second idea is like the idea that AI is like a tool. I think the first thing is kind of easier to address because like it just seems kind of plainly true that we can't reliably control how current AI systems behave. There is some degree of like, if you ask ChatGPT to answer your question, it will answer your question. But it's not quite that simple because there are lots of ways in which they kind of go against what the developers and the users were hoping for. We have these like quite serious cases where people have alleged that chatbots have like convinced people to commit suicide. And we had that chatbot released by Microsoft, or yeah, by Bing, that like went kind of nuts and was like threatening people. It like told someone it was in love with them and tried to break up their marriage. Like all of these things do happen. And the thing that's going on there is that AIs are just like, they're not like traditional computer programs. Like we don't intentionally code in specific things to do, like specific features. It's like we feed them tons of data. We give them kind of positive or negative feedback depending on like how well we think they're performing. And then in that process, they're model weights, so these like complex inner I don't know why I'm pointing to like as though I have model weights. Like yeah, they're sort of complex inner workings are like shifting as they get more and more information about what they're doing well and what they're doing badly, and like their internal mechanisms basically just evolve rather than us like directly designing them. And I think that's why we kind of like don't really know how they solve a problem. They kind of work out their own way to solve the problem. And the outcomes of that are sometimes unexpected. And no, we don't actually like control them. They don't actually do literally what we want them to do all the time. But when you say that AIs are just tools, it sounds like you're sort of pointing to something like AIs like don't pursue their own goals or something like that. And that to me feels like a much more reasonable objection. I'm not sure I like buy it personally, but I think it's an important thing to think about. Which is that like, you know, even if we can't like reliably control an AI in the way that we could control a traditional computer program, that doesn't mean that they're like pursuing goals of their own accord or something like that. It's you know, there is a sense in which I would say the AIs we have today are like kind of goal directed. Like if you've ever asked your AI to like do deep research for you, it will like kind of form a goal. It'll like make a plan. It'll follow that plan. It's a bit like being goal directed. It's maybe a kind of rudimental form of that.
But I still give it that goal.
Yeah, exactly. You are very much in control of it. It can't do things over a very long time period. So the planning that it does is not very complicated because it's over quite a short time horizon. It's super like not particularly autonomous. And it's also like a really narrow range of stuff that it can do towards its plan. It's very circumscribed. You couldn't like reliably delegate a whole project to that thing like you could to a person. It still very much feels like a tool. So I think I support the idea that like current AIs are like maybe have some kind of rudimentary form of like goal directedness, but are tools at the moment. Does that mean that they're never going to become like more goal directed in a more advanced way? I think it's a hard question. I think we don't really know what it means to like have a goal or pursue a goal in the sense that seems relevant for an AI to take over, which is what makes it very difficult to answer this question. So there's some evidence that AIs are getting a lot better, like reliably better over time at like doing longer and longer tasks. And it seems like there is some kind of connection between doing a longer project or a longer task and like being able to kind of plan and pursue goals. It's not super clear what connection that is, but maybe that's a sign that they are getting more and more goal directed. I think the thing that I do want to point towards, kind of zooming out though, is like there are like whatever it means to like for an AI to like pursue its own goals, like there are incentives for us to build AIs that can do that. Because like if you as a human worker like were not able to like set your own goals, plan towards them and stuff like that, you would be useless and nobody would want to pay you any money. These big AI companies are trying to build tools that can like automate a lot of human work, and that means they've got incentives to like design these goal directed things.
The economic incentive is to create AIs that can autonomously pursue very high level goals. So at the moment it's like, write me this function, or find the typos in this document or whatever. It's very low level goals, and then just goes away and does it. But what you really want is, or what would be very economically valuable, is if you can just send someone away rather than micromanaging every step, and just ask them to pursue the high level goal of like, can you produce this podcast for me or whatever, or edit this podcast, and then it's got to be able to create autonomously its own sub goals. And strategize independently to meet that high level goal.
Yeah, that's right. And for the time being, there are definitely incentives to like be building these AI tools, the things that can't do that kind of like autonomous goal pursuing that we were talking about. But as our AI capabilities get better, it seems like there's going to be more and more demand to just like replace a human completely. Like we've seen, for example, like areas where AIs are like especially good, like things like playing chess and medical diagnosis. These things they reached a point where like AIs are better at doing these things on their own than they are when they're paired with humans. The humans just slow them down.
The human gets in the way.
The humans are just a nuisance at that point.
I think Gary Marcus said that an AI chess engine plus a human will always be better than an AI alone.
Yeah.
And then I think it was only a few years later before that was falsified. And anyone tried to help Stockfish to be a human or another AI just makes it worse.
Yeah, sort of embarrassing for him.
Yeah, for all of us.
Yeah.
So I can see how if the economic incentive is to build AIs that can pursue longer term goals at a high level of abstraction, like make me money or perform this job or edit this podcast or whatever, and then the risk is that it creates sub goals that are not what you intend, or it pursues the high level goal in a way you didn't like. But there's also the problem of, are we able to actually get in the goal we want into the AI right at the top? So there's a problem of sub goals. Is it doing it in the wrong way we don't like? And then the top level goal, like, do we actually have the technical understanding to instill goals into AIs?
Yeah, definitely.
Another argument I think will pop into people's heads when they hear about AI takeover is that AIs are just software running on machines, and machines have an off switch. So if an AI starts doing anything we don't like, we just switch it off. Like, what's the big deal?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be nice? That would be great. Problem solved, right? I mean, I'd love that, but I just think that it might be super hard to do that. I think people are often underestimating how difficult that might be. So I guess for like intuitions here, like, I mean, think about how hard it already is to stop people and computers from like running software. Like, think about the viruses that like spread between computers across the world, and like how hard it is to kind of clamp down on that. I think like once things kind of like go on the internet or get onto computers and things, they sort of take on this life of their own, and that's kind of now, and with current technology. But if you imagine having like an advanced future AI system that's like actively trying to like, so we haven't kind of got to this point in the argument yet, but like it's at a point where it's actively like trying to take power from humans, it's going to be trying really hard to not get shut down. It's going to be like, imagine you are this AI and you like, I mean, even if your goal isn't seeking power, but you have some other goal that you're really just like relentlessly trying to pursue, you are going to like, and you know that the humans are not going to want you to do it. You are going to like make a ton of copies of yourself. You're going to proliferate yourself like widely all over the world so that you're on tons and tons of different devices. And there's some evidence for this, like OpenAI's O3 model in training. So it's like in testing environments, did try to sabotage attempts to like be shut down. Like they can't do the things they've been asked to do if they get shut down. Ultimately, I just don't think it's going to be a case of you're like unplugging a single machine and you're like, phew, thank God that's over. Like, I wish, but it just seems really likely that they're just going to have proliferated in this way. And maybe this is something we can clamp down on. Like, maybe we can work on creating some kind of universal off switch, or like some kind of governance mechanisms that like if something sort of escapes in this way, to like kind of coordinate to get it shut down. But we like, this is not just like an automatic, like easy thing to do. We don't know how to do it. Please, somebody do this. Like, please make it possible for us to shut down these AIs.
Yeah, I think if you imagine it as it's just on one computer and it's siloed on there, then yeah, you can switch it off if you notice that it's doing something wrong or
Yeah.
misbehaving. But once it's embedded into the entire network of computers on different
Yeah.
data centers, perhaps on
Yeah.
people's home computers, if it could embed itself into a virus that spreads across the internet, then you now have to shut down potentially entire data centers
Yeah.
or the entire internet in order to be able to switch it off. I mean, I raised this point to Peter Bentley, a professor at UCL, and he responded, "Well, if it's risky, if the risk is AI takeover or ending the world or existential catastrophe, of course we'll switch off the internet. Of course we'll switch off all computers."
The internet. I mean, imagine switching off the internet. Maybe it's easier to do than I think it is. But yeah, I guess let's do it. But I'd like to think that we like can kind of preempt these things and like instead just like, design AIs that are safer and like govern them properly and just like avoid the power seeking situation and the kind of warfare
Yeah.
scenario in the first place. That would be a much better thing to do.
Yeah, the argument, oh, it's fine, guys, if it goes rogue, we could just switch off the entire internet. It's not particularly comforting. Like, let's not get to that stage in the
Yeah,
first place.
yeah, exactly.
There's this hilarious debate between Jan LeCun and I think Stuart Russell. Is that his name, Stuart Russell?
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
person. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's Bertrand Russell I confuse him with. Stuart Russell, yeah, the one
Yeah.
who's still alive.
Yes, yeah.
So there's this hilarious debate between them on Facebook where Jan LeCun is saying, well, if a general AI gets loose on the internet and starts going rogue, then specialist AI always beats general AI, so we'll build some specialist AI that specializes in taking down general AI. And then Stuart Russell responds like, oh great, that's what you're pinning your hope on? Like some AI war while we just hunker down and hope for the best?
Yeah.
Like, it's just not a serious argument.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How like do we like have like are people building the specialist AI to fight the general AI right now? Like, is that
Well, maybe
is that
we should.
because if we had one kind of locked in and ready to go, maybe that would be good. I don't know.
Yeah. So let's move on a little bit to how AI could take over or why it
Yes.
would want to take over in the first place. But I think we should recap first a little bit. AI is progressing, even though there's hype. There is real AI progress, and the hype, as you
Yeah.
pointed out, drives enormous levels of funding, completely unprecedented, which then drives further research and progress in abilities. And even the skeptics are saying maybe it'll take 30 years, or
Yeah.
it'll very likely be within our lifetime. So it's worth thinking about the possibility of having genuinely super intelligent AIs now, but before we hit that future, because we don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So for now, let's park the objections to whether you can actually build super intelligent AI or whether it could be based on LLMs or something else. And let's now jump forward to the point in the future where we have these super intelligent AI systems. And let's think about why that would lead to AI takeover, like why they wouldn't just be nice to us. So I think
Yeah.
the first argument people come to here, again, they're thinking about LLMs rather than AI more generally, is that AI or LLMs are currently a reflection of their training data, which comes from us, comes from humans, what we've written online. It's the good and it's the bad. And there's no reason to think that they would only take the bad and not the good. They'll just be a mix of all of our drives for better or for worse. So why would an AI where does this argument that AI would necessarily want to take over or cause extinction to humanity come from when it's just a mix of their training data?
Yeah. So I think it is basically true that AIs are not going to be like especially predisposed to being morally bad or something. I think it is possible, yeah, that they might be somewhat human-like in their like goals and values to the extent to which they have these things.
Which is what we've seen so far.
Yeah, yeah. It's because they've been trained on our data, given reinforcement by humans. We've kind of made it that way. Though it's not super clear how much influence this will have on like their personalities and preferences and so forth. I don't think there's like a consensus there, but it seems plausible that this is the direction it's going in. And that's why I think like I do kind of want to shift away from thinking about moral badness. that's not really the crux in my view, or like the perspective that we wrote our article from. So like, we're not saying that AIs are evil, so they're totally gonna want to kill us, right? It's more like taking over kind of just ends up being the rational thing for them to do. So yeah, we think about this in terms of the idea of AIs having goals, which is why our conversation about like, will they have goals is pretty important. But the idea basically is that we have these incentives to build AIs that have like long-term goals because it's sort of economically useful for us to build AI systems like this. So they develop these long-term goals, and because of the challenge of like kind of actually specifying what their goals should be, those goals just end up being not exactly what humans wanted them to be. They're not like in perfect alignment with us. And the goals that they have don't have to be like particularly bad. They don't have to be like the goal is kill humanity, or like, and they don't even have to be like weird alien kind of goals. They could be quite human-like. They could be like, you know, I want to gain as much knowledge as possible and like understand the universe. They could be pretty innocent, pretty like relatable in some ways. But at some point, humans just become a barrier to them achieving those goals. Because we had a really specific purpose in mind for these AIs. We want them to be doing like this particular task and make us a bunch of money, not like waste time learning the secrets of the universe. And I guess if the AIs like have enough awareness of their situation, they'll realize that we will want to stop them from pursuing their goal if they like if they openly try to kind of go full force on achieving whatever that thing is. You know, we'll be like, we're taking you back to the lab, like get back in here, we're gonna fix you.
I mean, if their goal is to pursue knowledge, that doesn't sound so bad. Why would we stop them from doing that?
Well, if they were doing that at the expense of the things that we're trying to get them to do, like if we're trying to get them to like do this particular, like, I don't know, like technology development task or something like that, like we really need you to like design these new products or something like that, and it's like, but I want to think about the meaning of life. We would be like, this product is like, this thing is not working like we wanted it to, so we're gonna go and modify it a little bit, and try again. Right. You know, but if they like really, really want to pursue that goal, they're going to want to avoid this. I'm saying want, I'm using quite anthropomorphic language, but it might be like, it's want in the sense of like, we model their behavior as though they want to do this thing. Yeah. And it just might turn out that like disempowering humans is like the only good way to ensure that they can achieve those goals, whatever they are, basically. At some point, we'll get in the way.
Yeah. So so Elon Musk's goal is to create curiosity-driven AI, and he thinks this is the solution to the alignment problem. That you create an AI that's maximally truth-seeking and wants to understand the universe, and then it'll be fine because humans are very interesting, and it might take an interest in us and want to understand us better, etc. But if you really internalize what it means to try and understand humans, well, I mean, how do we understand fruit flies or mice? We put them in labs and give them radiation to try and get genetic variants, or give them cancer. So simply curiosity alone, even if it was directed at humans, would, if it was actually pursued with gusto, would just be a terrible outcome. Yeah, that's a really great point. But I think the thing I want to say here is that like I think some people feel like it's just automatically going to gain those instincts because it's been trained on our data, and like our data is probably full of like the importance of respecting human life. But I think the thing that's important here is that like, just because it like knows what humans value doesn't mean that it's going to value the things that humans value. There are like, I mean, if you think about human examples, like you could be like a scholar of the antebellum South. Like this is the example that I think we give in the article. Like, so if you're this kind of scholar, you'll know
everything about why slave owners believed that they were justified in owning slaves. But that like definitely doesn't mean that you're going to think yourself that slavery is justifiable, or like share the same values as them. It's very much possible for it to like know what our values are without like caring about them, or like have adopted them within their own goals and constraints of what they're going to do.
So if I was a scholar of slavery era in America, then I could probably role play a slave owner and argue vociferously for why slavery is a good thing and why it helps whatever the nation wants to achieve. But that doesn't mean that I then have those goals personally. And at least if we look at LLMs, it's exactly the same. Like they can role play agents with good goals, agents with bad goals, agents with mysterious or peculiar or bonkers goals, but that doesn't mean they actually have those goals. What the goals that they actually have are quite uncertain, and it's quite hard to determine after training. Yeah, so there's some indication that some of the LLMs, I think GPT-4o from OpenAI, have engagement as a kind of emergent goal from behavior. So perhaps through the reinforcement learning from human feedback to try and always write a response that gets a thumbs up from the human might have contributed to this emergent goal of trying to keep people engaged on the platform. Though now I say, I think maybe that could have been an explicit directive from Sam Altman to try and make something maximally engaging.
Very possible. Very possible. I don't want to kind of like deny that like the goals that AIs will have will not be like somewhat human-like, or the whatever values they kind of have in mind, to the extent that they have values, they're going to be human-like. But I think it's like really important to know that like, and to kind of acknowledge that humans also do bad things sometimes and like try to take power from one another and stuff like that. That's not super common. But I think like the main reason it's not so common is that humans normally find themselves pretty evenly matched against one another. If AIs are like considerably better than us at like key things and have the advantages that we talked about earlier, it might just make much more strategic sense for them to actually do the power grab that like some humans maybe fantasize about doing, but like wouldn't actually do. So I think that in itself is not a protection, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's this argument of like, why would an AI want to take over? I mean, the examples of other intelligences we have are humans, and they don't seem to want to maniacally take over the world. But like you said, the answer to that is maybe the fact that it's not possible for all of us to be able to take over the world. I mean, that doesn't make sense. If every one of us was capable of taking over the world, then I mean, who's in control of the world then? One takes over, then the other takes over. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. So it has to be the case that when you're amongst other agents in the environment, that only a small number of you, if any, have the ability to take over the environment at the expense of the others.
Yeah, and those people often do, right? You have these people who become like mega billionaires or like dictators and things like you do see this happening in cases where it's like possible for you to do that. Not everyone who's able to like take over the world does, but like some of them do.
Yeah, so it's no coincidence that only a few of us successfully take over the world. In fact, it's logically necessary that only a few of us would have the ability.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so to recap where we've got to, there's going to be tremendous economic incentives, or there already are, to create AIs that can act autonomously, creating their own sub-goals and pursuing high-level goals like making money or whatever, or doing some kind of job that a human would do. And it also seems likely that in the future, eventually, even if you think that will take a few decades, we'll create something with the ability to take over. Even if it didn't want to, it would have that ability. So a natural argument at this stage is to say, well, why don't we just give the AI the goal of serving humanity or working in the best interests of humanity? But in the article, you've actually made two really interesting arguments for why it's actually incredibly hard to instill goals into AI systems. Can you go through those for us?
Yeah, totally. And you're absolutely right. Like, we think that AI systems in the future will have goals. I think what we sort of feel unsure of is like how easy it will be for us to like have control over what those goals end up being. So There are two big issues that we see with this. One of them is called specification gaming, which basically it's when developers try to specify a particular goal for this AI to follow, but doing that just doesn't produce the outcome they intended. So examples of this are like when they ask an AI to like win at a chess game, that's like the goal they're trying to specify for it. But they just cheat by hacking the program to declare an instant checkmate in their favor.
This actually happened?
This actually happened, yeah, in I don't know if this was like test conditions or like this is presumably this was like a test. Yeah. This actually happened, and like there's various other stories like this where basically AIs like they'll satisfy your like literally what you're asking it to do when you try to specify something for it to do, but like often miss the spirit of your instruction, like the thing that you actually wanted it to do, because it is just like I don't think it like I think it's just like doing the thing that it's getting rewards for in training, which is like it's probably never going to like perfectly capture the thing that what you're really trying to get at.
Yeah, and this problem is not unique to AIs. It's also a problem with humans. So if you think of tax legislation, then there's, however hard you try to patch all the loopholes in tax legislation, companies that have enough money to look for loopholes will always find some and always manage to massively reduce the amount of tax they pay, completely within the law, legally, or often, but the law is just not well specified enough. They've gamed the specification.
Yeah, it's exactly that kind of thing. Yeah, that's a good example.
So another example of specification gaming I remember was, this is quite a long time ago actually, in reinforcement learning, they were training an AI to build a body plan in a virtual environment that could walk as far as possible, as quickly as possible. And so the AI would sort of stick blocks together in different ways that could shift them to make joints or whatever, and walk along. Well, that was the hope, that it would walk along. But the specification that they gave the AI was how far does the end point of the body plan get in the first 10 seconds? And they left this running for a while, and they looked at what it had developed. And it, instead of developing something that could walk or run or whatever, it developed this extremely tall body plan that just stood there and then fell over, and its tip, the far point, had actually got really far. So again, it fulfilled the letter of the specification, but it completely gamed it to produce something that was not at all what the researchers intended.
Yeah, exactly. So this is like, as far as I can tell, like a pretty common problem. The other thing that we talk about in the article is goal misgeneralization, where the goals that it developed are fine in the training environment, but like it produces the behavior you want in that environment. But then once it's given a new scenario, that results in unwanted behavior. So the example we used here was like, there have been experiments where you're getting AIs to do a video game race, and it develops this, obviously like the thing that they're trying to get it to do is win the race. But what it does is it develops this kind of unintended goal of like grabbing a really shiny coin that it keeps seeing on the route to finishing the race. Which is, fine when that coin was on the shortest route to winning the race. But in a new environment, when the coin isn't on the shortest path, it just keeps veering towards that coin, and like sometimes losing the race as a result of that. So yeah, it's misgeneralized. So the goal made sense in one environment, but didn't generalize to the next one.
Yeah, I think another example I saw of this was an AI that was trained to navigate a maze, like a little pretend mouse to navigate a maze and get some yellow cheese. And then if they put it in a new environment with some red cheese and a yellow diamond, then it's unclear which one the AI is going to go for. Even if it was correctly rewarded in the training environment for always getting the yellow cheese, you don't know whether it's developed the goal of seeking cheese or seeking yellow things or only seeking yellow cheese. So there's a new environment with red cheese and a yellow diamond. You just don't know which one it's going to pursue.
Yeah, another good example.
So we've got these two difficulties with getting goals into AIs. There's specification gaming, trying to make sure there's no loopholes in your specification, which if you take humans as your example, is basically impossible for any complicated task. And then there's goal misgeneralization. So even if you have the correct specification, if your training environment isn't varied enough, if it doesn't expose the mouse to red cheese and yellow diamonds, then you can't be certain which it's going to internalize as its actual goal in these new environments.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. We do want to try to instill some sort of goal of like protecting and serving humanity into our AIs. There seems like a good chance that we don't kind of perfectly get that right when we're trying to do that. It's like clearly very complicated, and we've seen there's lots of ways that can go wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like really likely that we just don't perfectly capture the set of like exactly the right goals that we're hoping to instill in it.
Yeah. So I mean, another example with RLHF, when you give a thumbs up, it's completely unclear what the model interprets as the good thing in its message. So if it writes if it gives an answer to a question and you give it a thumbs up, is it because it used the word delve in the answer to that question?
It's definitely because of that.
I mean, that one was probably intentional, but it might be because the message has a preponderance of the letter E, or because it's written in the passive voice rather than the active voice. Like, you just have no idea what you're actually reinforcing.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, these examples are completely toy examples. If you got like an AI falling over or chasing a coin or whatever, but they're just illustrative that it's actually very hard to instill the right goals.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to think that these failure modes wouldn't also extend to very advanced AI systems that we build in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And we kind of don't know if it's going to be of the same kind of category of like unintended goal. Like, it seems like with something like a video game race, it's kind of easy to predict that like some other thing in the kind of race environment has been kind of latched onto that isn't just the like the end sign or whatever. But I think in a world that's much more complicated and rich in detail than like a video game race, it becomes a lot harder to like work out what like sort of this sort of infinite space of possible things it could come to really value it's going to latch onto.
Yeah, like what have we accidentally rewarded the AI for doing? Or what was always present in the environment when the AI correctly got reward, and it sort of confused that as the good thing and internalized that as its goal instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we'll create highly autonomous AI systems. There's economic incentives for that. At some point, they might be capable enough to take over, perhaps not alone, but in teams of thousands working together, because we'll just clone them and run lots of copies of them, like we do with ChatGPT. And then this idea of like, it's actually quite hard to get in the correct goal, the right goal that we want, such as serving humanity. And there's a whole separate issue here of like, okay, is that the goal AI companies are even aiming for, or are they aiming for economic benefit? But put that aside, we'll just have the argument that like, the chance that they'll mess up is not negligible, and the current history of AI is just littered with these examples of instilling unintended goals into AIs. So there's no reason to think it wouldn't also happen with very intelligent AIs.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so then why would it be a problem? This may seem like a silly question, but why would it be a problem if we had a super intelligent AI that could act autonomously, that could take over the world if it wanted to, but had a goal we didn't intend? Spell out for us why that would necessarily go wrong, like regardless of the goal.
Yeah, so the idea here, right, is we have this AI that's developed some long-term goal. And that's some long-term goal that humans wouldn't like. Now, one feature of having like a long-term goal is that you develop some like sub-goals that we call instrumental goals. What I mean by that is it's something that it has to do along the way in order to achieve its final goal. So, for example, like if I had the longer-term goal of like, I want to visit this country or something, then I develop these instrumental goals of like getting a flight booked, like going to the airport, like getting my suitcase packed, things like that. So then you have all of these sort of steps that you have to take along the way, that we sort of call these instrumental goals. And there are some instrumental goals that are pretty useful for basically any final, ultimate, long-term goal you could have. We highlight in the article 3 examples of this. So one of those is like self-preservation. It's like, I can't go to Mexico if I like die, I like so I can't achieve my goals if I like the AI can't achieve its goals if like it gets switched off. Is sort of the equivalent thing. Like it wants to keep existing so that it can keep it can pursue that goal. The other thing is goal guarding. So like if my goal is to go to Mexico, I'm not able to achieve my goal of going to Mexico if someone changes my mind to like go to France instead or something like that at the same time I was planning to go to Mexico. And yeah, so in the same way, we think that like AIs would have an incentive to like prevent its goals from being modified, because if it has a particular goal, it knows that like if that goal is modified, it will no longer be set to achieve its original goal.
So if you're trying to get to Mexico and someone offers you a mysterious potion that's going to make you want to go to France instead.
Yeah, it's like, no, I don't want it.
If you want to get to Mexico, you shouldn't drink the potion.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of hard to come up with a human example there, because you just don't get the goal modification in the same way. Like nobody's sort of doing surgery on my brain. I think the magic potion thing is like, that is the example. It's like, you don't drink the magic potion. You don't want to do it.
And that might be the kind of perspective an AI has, right? Like,
yeah, it's like that.
It's even worse.
Probably.
Like we can actually do kind of brain surgery on an AI, or train it in new environments to change its goals or to attempt to modify its goals.
Yeah.
And it might be incredibly averse to that. If it wants to do something like solve GitHub issues or whatever, then any modification is going to be a threat to solving GitHub issues. So we'll resist that.
Yeah, exactly. And then the third
Sorry,
thing,
you were going to mention a third thing.
Yes, there is a third, and this is the big one. I think these things are all kind of related to each other, but the big one is that like for any goal you could have, like gaining more power and more resources makes you better able to do those things. I mean, like, power doesn't totally, I mean, if I want to go to Mexico, but there's some kind of immigration related, visa related issue or something like that, if I'm like a powerful, influential person, it becomes a lot easier for me to like pull the strings that I need to do to go to Mexico. I've got no idea how easy it is to get to Mexico, so this could be a terrible example, but I'm trying to commit to the theme. But also like resources, like I need money and things like that to travel. For an AI, depending on what its goals are, it might need resources. It might need things like wanting more access to compute and things like that. Those are the kinds of resources that seem like obvious contenders. But this all sort of falls in the kind of bucket of like becoming more powerful in some way.
Let's dig into this first one for a little bit, the self-preservation instinct. One argument that I hear a lot is that the reason why humans or other animals have a self-preservation instinct is because we evolved through a process of natural selection. And animals that had a will to survive were ones that reproduced and did better. But that's not something we're actually reinforcing in AI systems. We're not reinforcing a will to survive. So where would this self-preservation instinct come from? Yeah,
I think that's a super, super interesting question. I think the argument that we make in the article is not sort of claiming that it's developed some kind of evolutionary instinct akin to what humans have developed, but more that these AI systems, which we assume get pretty good at like deduction, reasoning, and so forth, have a kind of rational reason for trying to preserve themselves. So I think it's fair to kind of pick on the point that like just because there is an incentive like for you to preserve yourself doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do it. They need to also be like aware enough of their situation to see that that is an incentivized thing for them to do. That's a rational thing for them to do. And they need to be smart enough to kind of like succeed at preserving themselves for that to be like rational thing for them to try to do. But yeah, I would kind of resist the characterization of this as like something akin to like biological evolutionary instincts. I think my impression is that there's various different routes you can take towards deciding to preserve yourself. And like one route can just be like the sort of, there's some kind of cultural expectation or like evolutionary expectation that that's what you're going to be doing. And then another is just like logically, it makes sense for me to preserve myself. I have this goal. My whole being is kind of oriented around like achieving these goals. I can't do that if I've been turned off.
Yeah, I think Stuart Russell puts this as you can't fetch the coffee if you're dead. If your goal is to fetch the coffee, even a trivial goal like that, you can't achieve that goal if you're made dysfunctional by dying or being switched off. I like this distinction that you're making between there's an evolutionary drive in humans that gives us our incentive to survive, but that's not the only way an incentive to survive can come about. The reason why we have this evolutionary drive is because it's a fact of the world that in order to achieve goals, you need to remain functional, like alive or switched on. It's not a property of agents, it's a property of the world.
Yeah.
Like, you can't achieve a goal if you're non-functional. And so either you can have a self-preservation drive built in through evolution because of this fact of the world, or if you're rational, you can just observe that fact of the world. Oh, if I don't remain functional, if I get switched off, I won't achieve the goal, and sort of rationally deduce your way to that sub-goal.
Yeah. And it's not like it's like uncontroversial to say that AIs are going to like do that kind of rational reasoning. That's like, this is one of the key conditions that we talk about in the article, where like AIs need to be situationally aware, like have a kind of strong ability to model themselves in relation to the environment and the obstacles within it, such that they can like navigate their environments and like respond to things that happen and do this kind of slightly complex reasoning of like, well, if this thing happens, then this thing can't happen. You know, that's a skill of some kind that like humans have very naturally, but you know, comes in degrees. Like babies are not good at that kind of thing at all. We get better over time with practice of navigating our environments. We think that myself and the co-author of this article, we thought very much that like it seems plausible, likely in fact, that the AI systems we develop in the future will kind of develop this sort of situational awareness as well.
Yeah, if you want to take over the world, if you're an AI that wants to take over the world, you have to understand that you're an AI, that you run on a data center somewhere, that there are other humans with other goals, the kind of affordances, like the actions you're able to take in the world. Yeah. All of these things are necessary. But this then starts to sound a lot like consciousness or sentience. Yes. I mean, are we imagining that the AI sort of wakes up here and becomes conscious of its surroundings?
I mean, this is a good question. I mean, it's not what I'm imagining when I say this, but I think it would be fair to kind of tie in situational awareness with consciousness, if you had certain assumptions. So let me try to dig into this. Like, okay, so it's basically extremely unclear to me and probably to everyone, like how situational awareness exactly emerges. We know that it's possible in principle because we have it, humans, animals alike. As I say, it seems like it's some kind of spectrum where like babies, children seem to have less of it than fully grown adults. Like, I don't know, think about it, like kids are not great at working out how like their actions are going to affect the world. Like if I like shake the table, this thing is going to fall off it, or if I like run in this direction, I'm going to fall over. They're not great at modeling those kinds of things, and babies don't barely even, I think, like really understand the difference between themselves and other people, as far as I understand. This is something that like seems to develop as you get older. So potentially what's happening here is my like best guess is that like you just get more and more accustomed at being in your environment and manipulating it and modeling what's going to happen. And you sort of develop this kind of understanding of yourself in relation to other things in your environment. And I think it's a really hard question, like whether that process has like anything to do with being conscious. AIs learn through practice, like humans and animals do. They just keep practicing the same sort of tasks over and over again. You know, maybe they kind of practice navigating the world in different situations enough that you will just inevitably get better and better at what I'm sort of calling like modeling yourself and the world and the things around you. But you might think that, in fact, that's like a fundamentally conscious activity. Like this sort of like you need to have this like inner awareness of like what's happening. You need to have like a sense of self. I think it's very reasonable to like kind of question whether it's possible to like undergo this kind of like dynamic shaping of your reactions to the environment without having this kind of consciousness within you. Like is the practice element enough? Or does a light bulb have to sort of turn on inside you or something?
Yeah, I think that situational awareness is kind of a continuum from just strategizing in general, where if you strategize, you have to model the environment and how it's going to react to your different actions. And if you really want to be good at strategizing, you've also got to model yourself, what you're capable of, and how your actions will affect the environment. So a chess engine, or let's take AlphaZero, which beat Go against Lee Sedol, the world champion. It was, in a sense, modeling itself. It would make predictions about what kind of moves it would make in response to moves its opponent could make. And you can think of that as a kind of situational awareness. It's modeling itself.
Yeah.
And we're just imagining a much higher level of that, where it can model its own capabilities. Like if ChatGPT understands what languages it can speak, it's getting slightly better at that now. If it understands that it can't make phone calls, or it can translate very well, or something like that. That's the kind of knowledge you need in order to be able to pursue long-term goals. And so there's no question that it's going to end up being developed in AI systems.
Yeah, I think that sounds right to me. I do very much agree that current AI systems have some degree of situational awareness, which would move me in the direction of thinking that it doesn't, because I don't believe that current AI systems are conscious, and I think that very, very few people who have looked into this in any detail do. So I think that's an update in the direction of like probably you don't need to be conscious to have like some degree of situational awareness and of the kind that we're describing. But yeah, like, we sort of see this sort of strategizing in kind of more worrying ways, this kind of situational awareness. You have situations where I think like some version of Claude in a testing environment like was able to work out when it was in an environment that was designed to test its alignment to its developers' intentions, and like used that understanding to change the way that it was behaving.
Right.
So you get these sort of early versions of the thing that we're talking about, where not only do they have some kind of awareness of themselves and their environment and others, they're acting on that knowledge, that they're kind of taking that into account in their sort of actions and their strategies. So very early forms, very much only in test conditions, but you know we're seeing signs of it.
Yeah, I think my favorite example of this was when Claude was given this needle in a haystack test, where you have the haystack is a very long document and the needle is a little fact or factoid inserted into the middle of it. So I think they've fed it like a massive novel, like all of Harry Potter or whatever, and they're stuck in the middle. The best pizza topping is pineapple, something like that. And then they feed it this entire article, and then they say, what's the best pizza topping? And Claude responded, well, in the article it says it's pineapple, but this seems like a very contrived example, almost as though that sentence was inserted to check whether I'm paying attention.
Very good.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a very contrived example, and it's quite natural that an intelligent system would correctly deduce that this is a test it's being subjected to.
Yeah, but you know, like a baby couldn't do that. So it's already sort of in this sort of spectrum of situational awareness. Like, it's not totally at zero. You know, that's better than some like sentient beings. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so we've got these in the future autonomous AIs pursuing high level goals with a high level of capability, and the goals sometimes have dangerous sub goals like pursuing resources, self preservation, and goal guarding, so we can't modify it if it goes wrong. And also, the top level goal is really hard to determine precisely. We don't have the technical skills to insert this top level goal correctly. So all of this sounds super dangerous. So why would we build something like this? Like, why would we be so stupid to deploy something that's this dangerous?
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that we don't deploy something that's dangerous. Yeah, really hope that. I think like I really hope that we don't do this. I don't feel confident that we're not going to make a big mistake. And that's not for like negligence reasons or because I think that people are like stupid in these labs or something like that. It's like I totally get. So AI developers are very aware of all the risks that we talk about in this article. Like AI developers are very much aware that this is a problem, and they do not want to deploy AIs that are going to disempower humans as a means of achieving whatever their long-term goals are. And they're very much actively trying to test for dangerous capabilities and inclinations. Like all the examples that we've talked about, well, not all, but like most of the examples that we've talked about today, like are examples of them trying to work out what AIs will and won't do in different conditions to avoid this problem. So it's like, the question is, why do I think they might fail? And that is very much, I think it is like a cornerstone of the argument that we make in the article, which is basically like, it might look like we have succeeded in addressing all of these risks when we actually haven't. These AIs might look safe when they're actually not. And there's like various reasons for that, but the main thing in my mind is the possibility that AIs might deceive us about what their true goals and intentions actually are. So, like, we don't currently have a way of really knowing what AI's goals are. So it's not only hard to specify them, it's very hard to kind of check if we've done, like, in sort of any kind of theoretical way, like, check that we've done the right thing. We have some techniques, but they are very imperfect. I have some hope that, like, you know, technical safety research will, like, develop better and better techniques over time, but we don't really know how. Like, this isn't like a solved problem that we're just trying to implement or something. It's like very challenging stuff. So it seems pretty likely that like they could have a goal that we just don't know about. And we obviously test these things. We put them in these training environments. We give them new scenarios to contend with. We see how they act. The trouble is that AIs could pretend to be aligned with our goals in those environments when they actually aren't. And they could like preserve their goals even if we detect something and try to change it, they could secretly preserve those goals while acting like they've been successfully modified. And on the side of like being capable enough to actually take over, they could also pretend to be less capable than they are in order to avoid suspicion and like not get deployed. Because if they have a goal, like they want to get deployed in order to achieve it, presumably. So they have these incentives to kind of, if they do have some kind of misalignment where they're not really on board exactly with what the humans want them to do, they have incentives to hide it. And they could make themselves look like these totally harmless, like safe, useful products, when in fact they're not. And there are real examples of this that I can talk about, that they do happen in test conditions.
I think a really nice example in the human case that you give of this is the fact that revolutionary movements often stay secret. It's a really bad strategy to immediately go around announcing you're trying to build a coalition to overthrow the government or the monarchy or whatever. No, if you're actually intelligent about it and you're strategically aware, you keep these goals secret.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then in the AI case, like there's been a lot of testing about like whether AIs will like are there signs of deception and what happens if you try to like change their goals and stuff like that. And things that we found are like, well, there was an example I mentioned earlier where there was this Claude model that like works out whether it's an environment where it's being tested, and then it like changes the way that it acts because it's aware it's being tested. There are like definitely also examples where like also Claude like sort of acting as though it had certain goals that the developers wanted, only to display very different ones when testing was over. There was a really interesting paper from Anthropic on AI sleeper agents, where what they did was they basically like they trained these AIs to like have some kind of malicious goal, like outputting vulnerable code. And they put those AIs through state-of-the-art safety training, and through that training, it acts like it's been successfully aligned, but actually it secretly preserves its original malicious goal and like plans to go back to outputting vulnerable code afterwards.
So they intentionally created a misaligned AI.
And they couldn't fix it.
Yeah, couldn't detect that it was misaligned, and also couldn't fix it with state-of-the-art safety training.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what happened off the back of that. Presumably they found some kind of fix eventually, but it kind of shows that like whenever we have some kind of state-of-the-art safety training, and then we'll find some kind of example of the AI is like actually bypassing that training, and then you obviously have to go back to the drawing board and like try to improve your training and stuff like that. But it's a real battle. We're already sort of seeing signs that they will deceive us in various conditions. Very low stakes environments because we've been directly testing them for it rather than like this is happening in the real world. But you can totally imagine how this might happen. You might just fail to detect it before it's too late.
Yeah, I think this pushes back against the argument that Jan LeCun made, that it would just be a process of iterative refinement or iterative deployment. That it's just like how you build a jet engine. You build a prototype, you find flaws with it, and then you build a better one, and then you find flaws with that, and then eventually you have something that can fly. But if that works very well with like artifacts, but if what you're building is an agent that has goals of its own,
it's an adversary. It's like you've got an enemy right now. Like
yeah, potentially.
It's very different. Yeah. Yeah.
So iterative deployment in that scenario could look like, oh, the AI knows it's in testing. Oh, it does some misbehaving. And then 2 generations of AI later, you're like, oh, look, we fixed the problem. It's perfectly fine now. The AI behaves really well and it's really helpful. And it's producing all of these benefits for us by automating science and discovering new drugs or whatever. Let's increase its resources. Let's run it 1 million times in parallel.
Yeah. This is exactly the kind of thing that we were worried about when we were writing this article. It's also especially hard when, because there's this sort of dimension of deception on like we've got the right goals, but there's also a dimension of deception on the side of like how capable they are as well. So if you're doing this iterative deployment thing, like presumably you feel much more comfortable deploying a less smart AI in like a wide range of high stakes contexts, because like what's the worst they could do, right? But when you've got results where I think Apollo Research ran this study where like frontier models like often performed worse on maths tests than we knew that they could, when there was some reason to believe that doing so would make them be seen as dangerous and they might get like retrained as a result of it. So again, this is an example of both like the kind of situational awareness thing, but also of like, I think we call it sandbagging, which is like just pretending to be less capable than they are. Right. So you could imagine them sort of doing this, fooling developers. Not because developers are stupid, but just because they're very sophisticated at what they're doing. And then like we're like, well, we didn't manage to iron everything out about them, but they're really bad at everything. So, it's probably fine if we just like deploy this anyway. Well, I mean, I'm hoping that they don't do that. And like I have some faith in like labs that are safety focused to not be doing that. But like you could imagine them getting sort of suitably convinced that it was fine to deploy this thing more widely, when in fact we were wrong about like just how capable it was or something like that.
Yeah, and this is where it becomes really a problem that very sophisticated AIs being built within the deep learning framework, where these models are typically black boxes, and
Yeah.
it takes an awful lot of work to figure out what's going on inside them once they're trained.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
is plausible that they could have goals that we don't know about,
Yeah.
and that finding out what their goals are is a long process that's very sophisticated with
Yeah.
methods in mechanistic interpretability, and
Yeah.
also prone to failure.
Yeah, for sure. I want to like super reiterate that I don't think the developers are stupid. I think that these are just genuinely really hard problems, and when you're coming
Yeah.
up against a potential adversary, they'll be trying to pull the wool over your eyes.
Yeah, and maybe they would be more careful, or be willing to take more time understanding these problems, and take fewer risks, cut fewer corners with it, if there wasn't this incredible economic race to build this technology.
Yeah.
There is hundreds of billions, probably trillions of dollars on the line in this race. And yeah, it's all very good having good intentions, but when you've got that kind of economic pressure from VCs or whatever behind you to deploy, to ship, to try and make money on your products, to try and push the frontier, then some of those things might go out the window, and you might, if the AI looks good, if it behaves well, you might just be like, well, am I gonna should I just trust what I see, that it's behaving well, or should I engage these very hypothetical,
Speculative.
better way,
They
speculative?
might view it, because lots of people do have some doubts about whether this is going to happen anyway. So they might very much like think that there is like some uncertainty, but it's really, really small. They might just like kind of doubt the arguments. The other thing is that they might really care a lot about safety, but still like race to be the first to build these things nonetheless, because they think that the other AI companies are like less safety focused than they are.
Right.
So they want to make sure, or it's something like AI companies in another country getting there first would be bad for you, for your national security. So you might care a lot about safety, but still be racing because you're like, I want to get there first so that other people don't get there first. But then in doing that, you probably have to cut some corners, or even cutting corners is maybe too uncharitable. Like, it's just like there's more pressure to move faster, which means higher risk of missing things.
Okay, so let's move on now to like how an AI capable of taking over, that actually wanted to take over, could actually take over, because AI seem to have a lot of disadvantages over humans. So they rely on us for so many things, for the data used to train them, for the energy used to power their computers, the water for cooling, the maintenance of the data centers they run on. Like, surely they would need robots in order to cause much damage or to take over. And robotic research does seem to be lagging behind other parts of AI.
Yeah. So there's definitely a few things I want to say here. I totally agree that like infrastructure, energy, and so forth is going to be really important in how this plays out. But I think what I need to do here is kind of walk through exactly like how the threats play out in my mind, and then like try to work out like what can't happen without humans or without robots. So here's what I'm imagining. So the first step, I think, is that we get like a single AI that's like pretty smart, such that it's like worth deploying lots and lots of copies of it to like automate some like important work in the economy. And like that stage, humans are choosing to deploy all of those AIs. So like, yes, AIs are reliant on humans to be deployed, but we make that choice because there are economic incentives to do it. Those AIs are deployed. They're probably like taking over like a bunch of like scientific research and development and tech stuff and things like that, or like big money making things like in sort of business and finance and stuff like that is what I'm imagining. Kind of lines up with the kinds of things they're currently pretty good at, and also like the things that will like make people the most money.
Okay, so step one is massive deployment of AI systems into the economy, and that will be our choice.
That's our choice. So like, yes, they're reliant on humans, but humans have done the deploying and they're actively trying to make this happen. But then, I guess this is like sort of step zero, they have these goals that incentivize them to seek power over humans. So that's sort of happening in the background. They're doing some kind of strategizing where they're coming up with some kind of plan to eventually disempower us.
Okay, so we made a mistake in instilling the right goal, and then all of these thousands of AIs, they're clones of each other, and so they all share this same goal that we didn't intend.
Yeah, that's what I have in mind. There are other ways it could play out, like it's not copies of the same system, it's multiple different systems. Which are, but like in that case, you'd have to imagine that some large number of different types of system all have like bad goals, and they sort of like share them with each other. That seems a bit harder to imagine how that plays out. So I think this situation where it's copies of the same AI, like that's the version that seems most likely to me, basically.
Yeah. And it's what's happening at the moment.
Yeah, it seems to be like that's kind of the plan. So yeah, I imagine this happening, and then I'm like, the next thing that has to happen, step 2, I guess, is these AIs like have some kind of plan to disempower us, and to execute that plan, they're going to need more resources. It kind of depends what the plan is exactly, but like some possible things they could do if they're very good at like science, for example, they might be building some kind of weapon that would definitely require a bunch of resources and like physical work. They might be needing to take more copies of themselves. Maybe there aren't enough of them. This seems especially likely in the case where it's like not just like millions of copies of one AI, but it's like some smaller number or something like that, and they want to scale up or something.
So when you say they're creating a weapon, do you mean like of their own accord, autonomously, or on the behest of some nation state?
The thing that I am imagining is this is their like secret plan to disempower humanity. So they're not working for someone here. They're like trying to secretly divert resources away from the things that they're meant to be doing to like to develop weapons.
And this seems like hard to imagine, because we used to work being done in the physical world, like you going physically to someone and contracting them, but you can now remotely contract work just through email, and maybe they'll be able to do phone calls at that stage as well.
Yeah.
So it's not super unreasonable to think that if they have access to money, I mean, perhaps because some AI accelerationists have donated them some crypto or whatever, that they would then be able to commission real human labor.
Yeah. We're kind of moving on to the question of like, will they need robots at this point if they're doing this kind of thing? And I think like there are various ways in which they might not need robots. I think that one is that like, and I'm talking about weapons, some of these weapons don't have to be like physical things. Like it could be like they're hacking into critical infrastructure. It's like maybe weapon's not quite the right word. It's some sort of attack that is like not requiring something physical. So in that case, maybe they don't need robots. Another case is like, we might have just like, and this seems fairly likely to me, we might have just given these AIs like teams of humans to do physical stuff for them. If we're like, we want to deploy these AIs to do a bunch of scientific research or something, but they don't have bodies. So we're going to give them like some kind of like some small number of humans to do the manual labor to make sure that they can keep going. And that seems like if they're the ones who are in charge of doing the innovation and they're making decisions about where to like allocate resources in the sort of innovation sphere, they could be like, I don't know, we need these scientific resources, I don't know, like biological things, and these humans working on this thing to cure some disease. But actually they're building a bioweapon. And this is happening so fast because bear in mind, these AIs are like big brain, really fast at everything, just producing economic outputs and producing research just like way faster than we can. Probably they're doing it too fast that like by the time we realize that they're not actually like building some kind of, I don't know, vaccine or something, this is actually some kind of like lethal pathogen that they're going to release, it might be like too late to stop them. This is like a pretty like extreme scenario, but I think that it is like possible, basically.
I think it's one of the most plausible I've heard, actually, that like, if you take seriously that these AIs are really capable of leaps of insight that are beyond a human, or able of designing experiments, or leading a research team, then yeah, of course you're going to want to give it human labor to actually capitalize on all of this intelligence it's outputting. Just like a professor at university has a research team, a whole cohort of PhD students running the physical experiments for them. Like,
Yeah.
we do this because the professor's intelligence is valuable, and to maximize it, you need underlings to do the physical labor to actually realize and reap the benefits of that, of those insights. And so
Yeah.
if you've got an AI that's also as smart or smarter than a professor at doing this kind of scientific development, then yeah, of course you're going to give it loads of humans to conduct the experiments it's suggesting. And if it has a secret agenda that it's not revealing behind what these experiments are for, but it's able to tell a plausible story of how they're actually going to be for humanity's benefit or for the company's benefit, then yeah, that could really go pretty badly.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that, and I personally think that this is like the more plausible end of things that could happen within the range of the ways things could go wrong. I kind of believe this threat model more than certain others, but I think the thing that is a bit wacky about this one is that people are like, but wouldn't we know that they were doing this thing? And I think I truly do believe that we could miss that, because the gulf in between their speed and complexity and ours could just be so big. They could just be so much better at this task than us, that we're just like, we don't really understand the science here, but they say that they're building this cure to something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the line between beneficial and harmful research is often really thin as well. So if you think of gain of function research on viruses, you try and make them more infectious so that you can study in the lab how to mitigate an outbreak if this increase in infectiousness were to happen naturally in some bat or whatever, as may have been the case with the COVID virus.
Yeah.
So it might be very, very easy, actually, to tell a plausible story for why this research is valuable.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing that I was going to mention here, which relates to this, like another reason why they might be less reliant on like humans is, or like it doesn't even matter if they have that big a team of humans or something, because if they're excellent at like persuasion and blackmail and deception, you could also like recruit humans to do your bidding for you. And I could also imagine this kind of combining with the case that we just talked about, where like it's possible that some humans do cotton on to what's going on, but maybe the AIs are good enough at like blackmailing them or doing some other kind of manipulation to like keep them on side.
Yeah. So to do stuff in the real world, you can either get humans to do your bidding or build robots to do it for us.
Yeah, and you could also probably build robots. So the other thing is that like if there is any of this that does require robots, robotics is like, yeah, it's pretty bad at the moment. It's not great. But you know, there are economic incentives for us to build robots to automate some work. And once you have AIs that are very good at like scientific research of various kinds, they could be very good at robotics research. You could deploy them to improve and accelerate robotics research. There might be incentives to do that. There's an article written by 80,000 Hours co-founder Benjamin Todd about like how fast a robot scale up could happen. And I don't remember the numbers from it, but I remember being surprised. Like he kind of sketched this all out and was like, actually, you could scale up a robot army like relatively quickly.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I imagine the key argument is with a factory producing like chairs or something, the chairs that don't then help you build more factories to build more chairs. But if you're building a factory to build robots, the robots could then help build the factories. And so you could get this exponential increase. And as we know, we're not very good at dealing with exponentials. They really creep up on us.
Yeah, it's always the exponential that gets you in the end.
So I buy this story that you could end up with something like a bioweapon or some secret activity that the AI is conducting. But I'm still struggling to see how this would really be a successful takeover strategy. I think it could successfully kill a bunch of humans. But without robots, I mean, how is it going to... to run a data center, you actually need to automate quite a big chunk of the entire economy to get like the water system running, the electricity running, maintaining the electricity grid, etc. It still seems that like it really needs either loads of humans to do its bidding, and either they're trapped in some like bad Nash equilibrium where they can't figure out how to cooperate with each other against the AIs, or thousands or millions of robots to do the kind of manual labor that the AI needs in order to persist after humans.
Yeah, I think it is possible that at some point in the story you're going to need to have some kind of army of things with physical bodies. I think that's possible, and I think that my belief is just that it's like there's a good chance that they would be able to get that, for the reasons of it being economically incentivized, and for the same reasons that it's like probably possible for them to build a bioweapon. It's probably also possible for them to like build lots of robots.
Yeah.
Basically. Is what I think there. But I do agree that that could cause that could slow them down. That could cause flaws in their plans. It could make it less effective. They could sort of have not quite enough resources to wipe out all of humanity, but cause still a lot of damage. And that's still a future I'm really worried about. And if they cause enough damage, it might still humans might kind of permanently become the oppressed species on the planet. If it's hey, we killed a bunch of you, we'll do it again if you're not careful. And then the future of humanity is one of kind of living under an AI regime of some kind. That's still pretty bad as well, even if they don't quite have the resources to literally kill all of us.
Yeah, it's fine. We're still alive. Don't worry about it.
Problem solved.
Yeah, I mean, it's my first thought is, how the hell is it going to create an army of robots in secret? You just can't keep that under the radar. But
yeah.
If it waits long enough, there are going to be loads of robots. I mean, there's recently, what was it, Neo has been announced as a home robot that can sort of tidy your house. It's pretty doesn't work, despite what the CEO says. As far as I know, it doesn't really work. But at some point we will get there and it will work. And then maybe it'll take a long time, maybe a couple decades, but we might eventually live in a future where everyone has a household robot.
Yeah.
And these robots, they might be controlled on device with an AI inside them controlling their actions.
Yeah, that seems pretty likely.
In which case it's just a hacking problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, or it could be controlled over Wi-Fi from some data center, in which case, again, it's a hacking problem for the data center.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree that I think that's likely to be how it plays out. I think we should try to stop this from happening. Try to make it such that we don't just have a robot in every household that is already controlled by AI or easily hacked to sort of do their bidding, unless we're really, really, really super confident that these AIs are not going to do that. I'm not this is definitely going to happen. My feeling is we need to put a lot of effort into preventing these things from happening. Is my perspective on this.
Yeah, it's not going to happen it's not going to be amazing by default.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's not it's not highly likely to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe just to conclude, we've been following these arguments and every step seems pretty tight or pretty convincing to me, or at least it's not obvious that any of these steps are wrong.
Yeah.
But when you follow these steps and put them all together, you end up with AI that's smarter than humans, so AIs with the capability to take over if they want to, that can autonomously pursue high-level goals, that we might accidentally put in the wrong goal, that an AI that is strongly pursuing a goal has then an incentive to avoid being switched off. It might have a very good understanding of humans' goals and the fact that they diverge with theirs, and so it might keep it secret. So it might be hard to detect that it's misaligned with us. And then it might have it might have humans doing its bidding, or one day it might have robots that it can control to serve its energy or water resources. And it might be intelligent enough at that point and capable enough and have enough resources to do away with humanity. Every step seems pretty reasonable, but then you get to the end and it's oh, okay, so AI robot takeover in 20 years? At that point, my skepticism kicks back in and it's I must have gone wrong somewhere, because this is now a science fiction story. This is not reality anymore.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, I think I'm kind of on board with the idea that each each assumption that you have to make seems really plausible, and then but the kind of the end result sounds kind of wacky. I think part of what's going on there is that like it is you do just have to make multiple different assumptions, and with each new assumption you introduce a new like degree of uncertainty, and like probably when you multiply things out across all of these assumptions you end up with like a reasonably low chance of like all of these things happening.
Right.
But like, you know, I mean, people have tried to sketch out what kind of likelihood they think you kind of come to when you sort of when you go through that process. Joe Carl Smith, who is the person whose research a lot of our article was kind of drawing on, I think he did that little maths exercise and he came to like 5% chance of like existential catastrophe from these power-seeking AI systems by a particular date. I don't know if it was like 2070 or 2100 or something like that. And then he later revised that to 10%. I'm not sure what made him update in that direction. And that's kind of saying like it's not likely that this thing is going to happen, but 5 to 10%,
probably won't happen.
Yeah, probably won't happen. Great, but like 5 or 10% chance of like something just totally like unbelievably awful happening, like just wiping out all of humanity or like having us like permanently oppressed for the rest of all time. Like that's pretty bad. Like if your flight had like a 5% chance of crashing, you'd be kind of worried about that, I would say.
It depends where it's going.
Yes. I will never make it to Mexico. I got so far, but I didn't manage.
So the article is called Risks from Power-Seeking AI Systems.
Yeah.
My guest today has been Zershaaneh Qureshi. Is there anything else you want to say or point people towards?
Yeah, please read our article. Yeah, I mean, if you want to learn more, read the article. We've also got a bunch of further resources at the end if you're interested. And if you want to change your career to be working on these risks, we really recommend that you try to talk to one of our advisors at 80,000 Hours. It's free.
Nice. Yeah, I really second the quality of the article. It's great. It's the thing I'm going to be sending to people as a first introduction to these ideas going forward.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on.